Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about float fishing. Um, as you know, there are many types of floats. You can find them in many different places. Floats of all different colors, all different shapes, all different materials. And the easiest way I'm going to break this down for you is based on what fish you're catching. That is how you're going to determine which bobber you're getting. If you are pan fishing, you're probably going to be using a lighter bait, which is why I would recommend a bait with a bobber with a lead weight on it. See this little web weight here? This little guy here is actually a lead weight that even if you have a light bait on, the bobber will sit up right for you guys. This is a little fill bobber. It's made of balsa wood, so they're a little more expensive. They're like $1.30 for these guys. They're not very expensive, but they're not very cheap. Like for the exact same price, you could get these three. And that's why people are like, let's get these because they're cheaper. But sometimes that's not what you want to do because of the type of fish you're trying to catch, the type of fish you're trying to locate. If you're trying to catch trout, these would be a great bobber because your bait is going to be sort of heavy, but not that heavy. And the bottoms of these bobbers, even though they're not weighted, though you can get these exact bobbers weighted, which I recommend either way for trout because the bait is going to be medium. So either one will hold your bait up just fine, and they will also let you know when you catch a fish just as well. These little guys here, you can find these at Walmart. You can find these at Walmart. You can find every bobber I'm going to show you today at Walmart, but you can also find them at fishing stores. You can also find them at even gas stations. I've been able to find bobbers and even tube jigs and all that kind of stuff. Let's move on to these bobbers then. These are blind bag comb tackle. They are foam. And they are these neon fluorescent. They're way more fluorescent than you guys can see, but like eye-burning fluorescent. But these bobbers here are really good for heavier baits. If you're a catfisherman or want to get into catfishing, check out my video all about my catfish rig, which I use both these bobbers and these bobbers. It doesn't really matter which ones you decide to go for. These ones I feel like scare the fish a little less. These ones are obviously much more bright. These are actually black on the bottom, so it doesn't disturb the fish as much. And normally this is what you're going to be seeing coming out of the water. You're going to see like this part. You're not going to really see that part. That part will be submerged by the weight at the bottom, and you will see this. Same with this bobber here. I actually use these for catfishing over these, and the reason I would use these ones is, as you can see, there's no lead weight. And that means that your heavy catfish bait, which will typically be relatively heavy and relatively large, will not sink your bobber. Because if you have this bobber, for instance, and you have a catfish bait that's really heavy, you'll cast it, and then your bobber will just sink down because it's being pulled by the weight of your bait, unlike this one, which will sit upright just fine, as well as these guys here. These guys will hold up for very heavy baits because, as you can see, they're completely foam. This little part here, plastic. That little part there, plastic, and there's just a little tube. That's all that's plastic on it, and the rest is just a big foam, hollow ball here. So that's why these work really well for using heavy baits, as well as these guys here, because they are made of wood, and wood floats very well. A bobber I wouldn't recommend getting as much unless it's weighted, unless it has a little sort of weight. Something similar to that. It might say weighted on the package. Like for these, for instance, they will say weighted if they are weighted. These aren't weighted. And so same with these here. If you find these are made by the same brand. If you guys find these weighted, I would recommend getting them. But if they're not weighted and you have a light bait on, like a panfish or like a tiny little worm or something like that for a panfish or a bluegill, something like that, it'll just sit like this instead of like this, which is how it should sit. It'll sit like that, or maybe it'll rock a little or something like that, just not the way you need it to sit for the proper strike. Now that we talked about bobbers, basically, guys, bobber fishing or float fishing or whatever you guys call it, you're going to pick your bobber based on the fish you catch, not based on the price. So they're not going to get much more expensive than these. So really, it's not that big of a deal worrying about bobbers. They don't get very expensive. Now that we've about covered all the bobber types and all that stuff, like the main ones I use for rigs, how to set a fish, because this is where it gets professional, guys. setting a fish on your bobber, when the fish bites, the hook might not actually be in there. He might just be sitting there chewing your bait like bubblegum. You don't know. So what you want to make sure you do if that bobber goes down, whatever way the bobber goes, you strike the opposite direction. So if it's going this way, that way, if it starts like pulling like that and starts like being dragged away, a little jet ski, a little bobber starts flying away from you, strike it this way. Don't strike it straight up. That's not going to do you as good as or as much good as setting it the exact opposite direction. I wouldn't if you do set it the opposite direction, make sure not to set it like so incredibly hard that it pulls the entire thing out of their mouth. But like set it the opposite direction, just give it a little like that. That's how you set a fish. You don't need to pull it up into the air and leave it there for 5 seconds. You just need to nice little flick and make sure that your line is tight when you do that. So like if your line is sitting there drooping and it's all like twisted or something near the shore and your bobber is out there, then just reel in the slack and then set. But I don't need to set it like until like you're flinging the fish out of the water into oblivion. Instead, just a little like that, just the opposite direction that the fish is pulling your bobber away from you is the best way to set the fish. That about covers fishing the bobber. I have plenty of videos about certain rigs, and most of them involve a bobber. So if you guys watch those videos, you will know the exact types of bobbers that I use for the exact types of fish that I catch. If this video you found helpful, be sure to leave a like. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.